Assalamualaikum to Madam Anita binti Hasli. Today, we will be presenting our FIN537 group project. My group consists of 5 members, which are Nurin Atira binti Abdurrahman, myself Nur Alia Shahira binti Rizaman, Izati Shamimi binti Harunor, Rina Jasren anak Unau, and Isabel Nante anak Maximilian. So let's begin with the introduction. Corporate finance is an important part of managing a business as it provides the framework for making key financial decisions related to funding, investment, and resource allocation. It ensures the firms can effectively manage their financial resources, address competitive challenges, and structure their organizations to achieve both short-term and long-term financial goals. Beyond this, corporate finance is integral to maintaining a company's stability by balancing risk and opportunity in financial decision making. In this area, capital structure plays a particularly significant role because it directly impacts a company's financial health, operational efficiency, and long-term sustainability. Meanwhile, capital structure refers to how a company combines debt and equity to finance its operations and growth. Finding the right balance is crucial as it affects the cost of capital and ultimately influences shareholders' value. Companies need to decide on the proportion of short-term versus long-term debt and determine the timing and types of financing to rise. These decisions are essential to maintaining financial stability and supporting a company's growth. A company's capital structure is shaped by several factors, including market conditions, tax consideration, and urgency costs, and all of these require true analysis. Traditional funding from financial institutions is often seen as a less flexible option. While these institutions provide reliable funding, they generally stay out of a company's strategic decision making, leaving firms to independently develop their capital strategies. In this video presentation, we will explore the various aspects of capital structure, such as the factors that influence it, where to determine the optimal structure, and its impact on financial distress, tax implications, and agency costs. Additionally, we will explore theories like pecking order theory and the signaling hypothesis to better understanding the principles behind capital structure decisions.
What is capital structure? The capital structure is an important decision to a business firm because the main objective is to maximize shareholders' wealth. To achieve the goal, the firm should make decisions on an optimal combinations of equity and debts, which can bring the lowest cost of capital. The capital structure is also significant to financial management decisions in how the company tries to obtain and manage the long-term financing that is needed to support its long-term investments. This debt versus equity. Debts and equity are two primary sources of financing for a company. Debt holders have a lesser control over the company and do not directly determine the running of a business. As you can see here, the cash flow distributions. If the firm is entirely financed by equity, all its generated cash flows will be paid to equity stakeholders. When it issues debts alongside the equity, the cash flows are shared between common stocks and the debt holders, with the debt holders getting a fixed return, whereas the common stockholders receive the balance depending on the earning of the business or the balance remaining after accounting for the debt holders' return. Next is determining optimal capital structure. The optimal capital structure is impacted by the weighted average cost of capital, WACC, cost of debt, and cost of equity. According to the traditional approach to capital structure, an optimal degree of financial leverage can increase the overall of the firm because of a reduction in its WACC, because the firm substitutes less expensive debts for more expensive equity. First, agency costs. The agency's cost of approach to optimal capital structure regard the optimal capital structure as that which minimizes the sum of the agency costs of debt and equity. This theory states that total agency costs decrease as some debt is added, but then start to increase as the ratio of debt increases further. Next is tax deductibility of interest. Interest payment can be deducted from taxes, which can increase a firm's value when using more debts. Higher debts also increases default risk, which may lead to higher required return from investor. Besides that, bankruptcy risk. Lenders prefer to give loans to borrowers with a low credit risk. They can get cheaper loans, while early stage or unprofitability companies may face higher costs or may not get loans at all. Next is business risk. This is how a company operates without considering debts. For instance, a shift in consumer preference, a change in unit costs, and increase in competitions. Generally, if the firm having higher risk, the lesser financial leverage in the optimal capital structure. Last but not least, lender risk appetite. Most lenders, especially banks, are generally more interested in safeguarding their capital rather than seeking high returns. Lenders may view lending to an early stage company without a track record of profitability and positive cash flow as risky and may be unwilling to provide debts.
I'm going to discuss the factors that affect capital structure and capital structure decisions. First one is business risk, where it is influenced by factors like fluctuations in demand, price changes, and operational efficiency. Companies with higher business risk experience greater uncertainty in their earnings, which can make it challenging to meet fixed debt commitments. Next is financial risk, where it arises from the potential for a company to experience financial distress due to its capital structure choices, primarily influenced by the levels of debt and equity financing. Lastly is market conditions. Fluctuations in market conditions such as interest rates, stock market performance, and economic stability can significantly influence a firm's choice between debt and equity financing. I am going to explain about financial distress. Financial distress means where a company deals with a situation in which a firm fails to meet debt obligations to its creditors. There are three determinants of financial distress. One, profitability ratio, where it indicates how effective a company is in generating profits given sales and its capital assets, and measuring a company's ability to generate over expenses. Next is firm size. Small firms have the likelihood to fall than big firms because small firms have poor market experience, limited connection, and limited financial resources. Lastly is leverage ratio. Shows heavily the firm is in debt, giving an idea of the amount of leverage used by the company.
I will discuss about the relationship between tax effect and financial distress is crucial for corporate financial strategies. The first key point is interest tax shield. Corporations borrow the benefits from the interest tax shield, allowing them to deduct interest payment from the taxable income. For the second one is the trade-off theory. An optimal capital structure balance tax benefit against the risk of financial distress. High leverage increase the likelihood of distress, negating tax advantages. The third one is economic downturns. Over-indebtedness can lead to tax avoidance as cash flow improvement measures, which complicates financial reporting and raise transparency issue. Next is the agency cost of equity. Agency costs arise from conflict of interest between shareholder, principals, and management agents due to dispersion of ownership and control. For the manifestations of agency costs, the first one is monitoring costs. Expenses incurred by shareholder to oversee management, such as hiring auditors. The second one is bonding costs. Management's efforts to signal commitment to shareholder interest through performance-based compensation. The next one is information asymmetry. Managers often have more information than shareholder, leading to decisions that may not maximize shareholder value. This also can result in risky projects that benefit management at the expense of shareholder. The last one is implications. High agency costs can lead to inefficiencies and lower profitability. Effective governance practice that align managerial incentive with shareholder interest can enhance firm performance and increase shareholder value over time. Thank you.
I will be discussing the pecking order theory, an important concept that helps explain how companies decide on their sources of financing. The pecking order theory, first introduced by Myers and Majelev in 1984, suggests that companies have a specific preference order when it comes to financing. The first one, internal funds, such as retained earnings. Second one, debt, loans or bonds. The third one, equity, through issuing shares. This hierarchy is based on the cost consideration associated with each financing option. Internal funds are typically the least expensive option because they do not involve external costs, such as interest payment or equity issuing fees. Debt, on the other hand, is generally cheaper than equity due to tax benefits and lower issuance costs. Equity, however, is considered the most expensive form of financing because of the dilution of ownership, higher transaction costs, and the negative signal it can send to the market about the company's financial health. Here are the real-world examples. Let's consider Apple Incorporation. Apple has large cash reserves and, as a result, primarily relies on its internal funds to finance its operation. The company only resorts to debt when it requires additional capital. This behavior aligns with the pecking order theory, where companies with strong internal resources prefer to avoid external financing. On the other hand, companies with limited liquidity, such as many startups, typically turn to debt financing first. These companies often have to rely on external sources because they lack the internal funds required to sustain growth. Tesla provides another interesting case. Tesla, a company with substantial financial flexibility, sometimes divides from the traditional pecking order. For instance, Tesla has raised capital by issuing equity, especially when pursuing aggressive growth strategies or expanding its market presence. This shows that companies with financial flexibility may sometimes prefer equity issuance to fuel their long-term vision, even if internal funds or debt would be available. Criticism. While the picking order theory provides a useful framework for understanding corporate financing, it has been criticized for oversimplifying the decision-making process. Not all companies behave the same way, and factors such as industry-specific conditions, market trends, and corporate culture play a significant role in shaping financing decisions. For example, in high-growth industries like technology, firms may prioritize equity financing to support rapid expansion and innovation, even if they have access to internal funds. This can deviate from the theory's prediction that companies will always prefer internal funds over equity. In addition, the theory assumes that all firms face similar financial structure and decision-making constraints, which, in practice, is not always the case. So, while the picking order theory offers a general framework for understanding corporate financing, companies must also remain flexible and adapt to their unique circumstances. Next, I will turn to the signaling hypothesis, which examines how a company's financial decisions communicate important messages to investors. The signaling hypothesis, developed by researchers such as Braley, Myers, and Allen, suggests that when companies make financing decisions, they are sending signals to the market about their financial health, growth, prospects, and future cash flow expectations. These signals can significantly influence investor perceptions and stock prices. Debt as a signal. When a company takes on debt, it is often perceived as a sign of confidence. Investors may interpret the decision as the company believing it can generate sufficient future cash flow to meet its debt obligation. This signal can lead to an increase in investor confidence and a higher stock price, as debt is typically associated with stability and growth potential. For instance, consider the case of Microsoft in 2021, when the company announced a major share buyback program. This move was seen by investors as a signal of financial strength, and consequently, Microsoft's stock price increased. The buyback communicated to the market that the company has sufficient cash reserve and was confident in its future performance. Equity as a signal. On the other hand, issuing equity can send a more negative signal. It may imply that the company is overvalued or in financial trouble. Investors may perceive a stock issuance as a sign that the company needs capital due to insufficient internal funds, or as an indication that management believes the stock price is inflated. As a result, equity issuance often leads to a decline in stock prices or investor skepticism. However, the interpretation of equity issuance can vary by industry. For example, in the technology sector, investors may see the issuance of equity as a positive signal that a company is expanding or investing in a new project. In contrast, in more traditional sectors, such as manufacturing, issuing equity might raise concern about financial instability. Risk of misleading signals. The signaling hypothesis also highlights a potential risk. Companies may try to manipulate investor perceptions by issuing debts or equity to send a specific signal, even when their financial health doesn't align with the message they are trying to send. For instance, a company might issue debt to appear strong, but if its financial position is actually weak, investors may uncover this inconsistency, leading to a loss of trust and a decline in stock price. This phenomenon is also known as a false signal, and it can backfire if investors dig deeper into the company's financials. Industry and context matter. Another limitation of the signaling hypothesis is that it assumes signals are universally interpreted in the same way across all industries. In reality, the interpretation of signals depend heavily on the industry context. For example, in high-growth sectors like technology, issuing equity might be viewed as a sign of expansion and innovation, whereas in more mature industry, it could be interpreted as a sign of financial weakness. In essence, the signaling hypothesis underscores the importance of transparency and clear communication for companies. When making financial decisions, firms must consider how their action will be perceived by the market and ensure that their signal align with their actual financial position. To wrap up, both the picking of the theory and signaling hypothesis provide valuable insights into how companies approach financing decisions and communicate with investors. The backing of the theory highlights the cost-driven preferences companies have for financing, starting with internal funds, moving to debt, and only turning to equity as a last resort. Meanwhile, the signaling hypothesis emphasizes the importance of how financial decisions send messages to the market, shaping investor perceptions and ultimately stock prices. However, both theories have their limitations. The backing of the theory oversimplifies the decision-making process and may not fully account for industry-specific conditions, while the signaling hypothesis requires companies to be mindful of how their signal may be misinterpreted or backfire. In practice, businesses must balance these theories with their unique circumstances and market conditions. By doing so, they can make informed financing decisions that not only support their growth objectives but also build trust with investors and stakeholders. Thank you for your attention.